The real property question from July of 2000 is about as sadistic and unpleasant a bar exam essay question as you can imagine seeing. For our purposes, once again, this will be an enormously constructive and useful question. Have a look at the call of the question. Who should prevail in Sam's suit against Paul? Discuss. Initially, this looks like a simple civil remedies problem involving one lawsuit. Sam is going to have a theory or theories of liability, and he's going to have a prayer for relief. And that prayer can include damages, restitution, and equitable relief. As it turns out, this is a problem that crosses over the law of real property, the law of contracts, and the law of wills and trusts. What a delight. Also, this is a fact pattern that, once again, emphasizes the complete importance of careful outlining and preparation before you start writing. Go to the top of the problem and let's have a look at these facts together. In paragraph 1, we find out about the contract between Sam and Paul for the sale by Sam to Paul of a mountain lakefront lot improved with a residence. The contract is silent as to the quality of title, but provides that a quitclaim deed will be used. In a quitclaim, the grantor is giving up whatever right and interest the grantor has to this real property in question. Paul fails to tender the agreed upon price. Sam sues Paul for specific performance. Okay, well, we know in the call of the question that Sam has sued Paul, so the theory of liability appears to be one for breach of contract, and the prayer for relief appears to be specific performance. So we can sketch that out on a quick outline very easily. We remember the elements of specific performance, more or less, and we're ready to go. But still we have a lot more fact pattern to review. Look at paragraph 2. Now we're following the chain of title to this parcel. So we focus first on Sam, our grantor, and then we look all the way back to Owen. We find that the parcel is only accessible during the summer months, and it's been occupied by Owen and Owen's family since 1980, so 20 years by the time of this fact pattern. In 1984, Owen conveys to Doris and George, so long as they both shall live, and then to the survivor of them. And so we've got an apparent joint life estate and then remainder to the survivor. In paragraph 3, Owen dies. Testate. No specific reference is made to the property, but a residuary property clause favoring daughter Doris. Doris and George and their families use the vacation property during the summer. Remember, that's the only time that the parcel is accessible. Doris dies. Testate in April of 88, devising and bequeathing her estate to her son, Ed. Next we learn about George. He executes a deed in May 88, purporting to convey a fee simple absolute to Cain. Cain occupies from 88 through 96, and then in 97, Cain conveys to Sam, and Sam has occupied for the last few years. The last paragraph of the fact pattern gives us the adverse possession statute, 10 years, and we find the most threatening sentence in the fact pattern, quote, "There is no statute or decision in an appellate court either repudiating or affirming the common law doctrine of destructibility of contingent remainders." We pause now for bar applicants everywhere to go looking for a shot glass and a bottle. Then we get the final call of the question. Who should prevail in Sam's suit against Paul? Discuss. I grant that this is a rather intimidating fact pattern. But like all bar exam essay questions, it becomes a lot more simple once you organize and outline your thoughts carefully. So please turn the page and let's have a look together at the outline of issues that I've generated for this fact pattern. It's a fairly straightforward one, and you'll see that I am using some techniques that can be invaluable to you as you prepare for the bar exam. Have a look at Roman numeral 1 in the outline, where I sketch out the basic lawsuit, Sam versus Paul. I focus on the contract. There isn't a whole lot to say. the contract appears to be valid, and it doesn't look as if there is any monkey business going on with regard to formation, etc. We focus next on the breach and on Paul's defense to breach, and then we have to trace Sam's interest in this parcel. And doing so requires us basically to just follow the characters. So we go to Owen, Owen to Doris and George, etc. 8 steps, the last step of which is a consideration of the destructibility of contingent remainders. Finally, we reach a conclusion, and then we move on to specific performance. Here I'm not doing anything very intellectual, but I am being meticulous about being mechanical. I talk about the various elements of specific performance. Incidentally, you will see some variations about the elements of specific performance, both in the academic literature and also in the answers that I present. I do so just to remind you that there is no one right way to do any of this. Our goal is to write well-organized, responsive, accurate, analytical, passing answers. There's plenty of room for differences between individuals to achieve the same successful scores. So now briefly, let's have a quick look at the answer. I'll show you where there are some bits of analysis that I think might well be worthwhile for you to review with some more care. Take a look at the very first paragraph, and as usually is the case, I lead with the facts, and I indicate very briefly what the analysis is going to look like. So we focus on the contract and the breach. It's all very simple. All I'm doing here is reporting on what happened and building the analysis. The defense to breach probably is the most complicated aspect of this analysis, but it isn't very complicated. Merely asserting Paul's defense and setting up for further analysis. And that's what I do in the part below, where I trace carefully the chain of title of this property. And you'll see, I use as headings the most important facts. So I use the facts as an organizing principle when there are a number of different facts that relate to the same basic issue. This is a technique that you're going to see over and over again in your work with me. We see that where we have legal elements, like for example in negligence, duty, breach, causation, damages, and defenses, these make good headings. But here we see a situation where there's a series of connected facts. And here we use the facts as an organizing principle because it makes it easier for us to keep track of our ideas, and perhaps more importantly, it makes it easier for the grader to keep track of our ideas as he or she is doing their quick work, like a garment worker getting paid by the piece for reaching judgments that affect your professional future. So as we review the various steps in the chain of title, I think you'll see that I am mostly interpreting the facts. There's a little bit of law scattered through here and there, but basically what I'm doing is I'm reporting on what happened, and then I'm interpreting what it means legally. And it seems to me that there is a possible cloud on this chain of title, but fundamentally the chain of title looks fairly good for our plaintiff. But remember, the title argument isn't the only argument that the claimant can make with regard to title. There's an adverse possession issue also. Now, you'll notice I don't organize adverse possession based on the mental, physical, and time elements. One well could have done so. I think that we're under a fair amount of time pressure, so I focus on the key issue with regard to adverse possession, which is tacking. And it does seem to me that the analysis is fairly straightforward once we get it set up. I give one quick paragraph to the destructibility of contingent remainders, and ultimately I reach the conclusion that Paul is in breach but has a pretty good defense to liability. Finally, I conclude that if Sam's claim to title by deed succeeds, he wins. If adverse possession is his only claim to title, Paul wins. Finally, I focus on the preferred remedy in this case, specific performance. And I go through the elements. The satisfaction of conditions by plaintiff, perhaps, is the most complicated of the steps in this analysis. and it isn't very complicated. Ultimately, I conclude that Sam will obtain specific performance against Paul if George is found to have had good title when he conveyed to Cain. Otherwise, Paul wins, and I conclude that probably Sam's interpretation is going to be correct, and thus I conclude that Paul is liable for breach and will be ordered to specifically perform his side of the contract.